I haven't been home in 3 months. The media calls it dedication. The board calls it leadership. But the truth is simpler. My penthouse still smells like grief. Every night, the elevator doors open to silence that screams too loud. The foyer with its imported marble, the living room where nothing lives anymore, the kitchen where her coffee mug still sits in the sink because I can't bear to wash it. So I stay here, on the 47th floor of Vale Atlas Tower, where numbers don't ask questions. Welcome back, family, and if you're new here, welcome home. We tell stories that hit different, stories that feel real. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you vibe with what we do here, that subscribe button, it's right there waiting for you. Let's build something together. At exactly 11:47 p.m., Langston Vale watched the numbers on his phone tick forward. 11:48, 11:49. Each minute a small victory. Each minute further from the decision he couldn't make. The city sprawled beneath him, a constellation of amber and white, indifferent to his insomnia. He pulled the cashmere throw tighter around his shoulders. It was the one from his mother's reading chair, the one he'd taken from the penthouse on his last trip up. 3 months ago. 93 days. The blanket still held traces of her perfume. Chanel No. 5. The classic one. Because Etta Winslow Vale never saw the point in following trends. Forbes had run a profile last month. The CEO who never sleeps. They photographed him in front of floor-to-ceiling windows, arms crossed, jaw set. The portrait of ambition. Chairman Hollis Crane mentioned it at every board meeting, that easy smile spreading across his face like oil on water. "This is what separates the good from the great," he'd say, gesturing at Langston's rumpled shirt, his 5 o'clock shadow. But Langston knew the truth. He stayed because going home hurt too much, because the air there felt heavy with absence, thick with the weight of all the conversations they'd never have again. The hum of servers filled the silence. The glow of monitors offered a different kind of comfort, one that didn't echo with her laughter, her footsteps, her voice calling his name. Langston stood and walked to the window. Chicago slept below. Millions of people in their homes, in their beds, with their families. He pressed his palm against the glass. Cold. Real. Outside, the world moved forward. Inside, he remained stuck, suspended in the moment he'd found her in that reading chair, beloved open on her lap, her chest no longer moving. His phone buzzed. A text. Iris. He didn't need to look to know what it said. "Still at the office? The board is worried. Hollis asked about you." She'd stopped calling after the 3rd week. Texts were more efficient, bloodless, calculated. Never once did she ask if he was okay. Never once did she say she missed him. Because Iris Halbrook Vale had stopped missing him 2 years ago. Around the time she moved into the guest room. Around the time she started building a life that didn't include him. When they did see each other, it was in public. The philanthropic gala at the Art Institute, the cancer research fundraiser at Navy Pier, the economic forum at the Four Seasons. Iris would arrive separately, already positioned near the right people. Her smile calibrated for maximum effect. She wore Valentino or Dior. Her blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon. Diamonds at her throat catching the light like ice. They'd stand together for the photos. His hand at the small of her back, her head tilted toward his shoulder, the perfect power couple, Chicago's golden pair. "Mr. and Mrs. Vale," the photographers would call. "Over here, one more." And they would smile. God, how they would smile. In private, the performance ended. Iris slept in the guest room, had been for 2 years now, since before his mother got sick. The official reason was his late nights, his early mornings, conference calls with Tokyo and London that came at ungodly hours. "I need my sleep, Langston," she'd said, her voice measured and reasonable. "You understand." He did understand, just not in the way she meant. The last time he'd been to the penthouse, he'd noticed fresh flowers in the guest room. Peonies. Iris's favorite. The bed had been made with new sheets, Egyptian cotton, higher thread count than what they'd shared in the master bedroom. Books on the nightstand he'd never seen her read. A bottle of wine, half empty, with a single glass beside it. She'd made a home in their home. Without him. Langston never asked why. He already knew. The same reason she'd been away on a business retreat when his mother died. The same reason she'd missed the funeral. Couldn't reschedule. So sorry. You understand? The same reason she looked at him now with those cool blue eyes and saw nothing but an asset to be managed. Their marriage had become a merger. Neither party wanted to dissolve it. Not yet. Not while the optics still worked in their favor. His phone buzzed again, another text. He set it down without looking. Outside, Chicago slept. Inside, Langston counted the hours until sunrise. Every night at midnight, Nomi Blackwell cleaned the 47th floor. She arrived with her cart, industrial cleaner, microfiber cloths, a vacuum that hummed like a distant prayer. In 5 years of working the executive floors, she'd perfected the art of invisibility. The executives liked it that way. They could pretend she wasn't there, that their trash emptied itself, that the floors polished themselves to that mirror shine. But Nomi noticed everything. She noticed when Mr. Vale started staying late. One night became 2, became a week, became a month. She noticed the couch delivered to his office. Leather, expensive, long enough to sleep on. She noticed the mini fridge that appeared, stocked with bottled water and meal prep containers he never ate. She noticed the way he stared at his phone sometimes, thumb hovering over the screen, before setting it down without making the call. One night in early October, she noticed the couch pillow damp. She touched it, tentative, respectful. Her fingers came away wet. Tears, recent ones. The leather still held the impression of his body, the warmth of where his head had been. Nomi stood there for a long moment, her cart beside her, the vacuum silent. Through the window, the city glittered, beautiful and cold. She understood that kind of pain, the kind that came in the wrong hours, when the world slept and grief refused to. The next night, she left a folded blanket on the couch, navy blue, soft fleece, nothing fancy, the kind that actually kept you warm. No note, no explanation. She just left it there and moved on to the next office. The night after that, she left soup. Homemade chicken and rice in a thermos, still hot. A plastic spoon taped to the side, still no words. She emptied his trash, wiped down his desk, vacuumed the corners, treated him like every other executive. Invisible service for invisible pain, but the gifts remained. Small acts of recognition, one human seeing another. On the third night, Langston was awake when she arrived. He sat at his desk, pretending to read a contract. But his eyes weren't moving across the page. Nomi pushed her cart in, began her routine. Empty the trash, wipe down the desk, vacuum the corners. The silence stretched between them, professional, expected. Then Langston spoke. "Why do you work nights?" His voice startled her. In 5 years, he'd never asked her a question. Never asked her anything except to come back later or leave the trash. Nomi stopped vacuuming. She looked at him, really looked, saw the exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes, the grief he wore like a second skin. She shrugged. "Because daytime reminds me of things I lost." The words landed between them. Simple, honest, devastating in their plainness. Langston nodded slowly. He understood that language, the vocabulary of absence, the grammar of things that hurt too much to name. They never said more. Nomi went back to vacuuming. Langston went back to pretending to read. But something had shifted, a recognition. Two people existing in the wrong hours for the same reason, because the right hours had become unbearable. When Nomi finished cleaning, she left without a word. But the next night, Langston found an envelope on her cart. Inside was a check for $5,000, A note in neat handwriting. Thank you for the soup. LV. Nomi stared at the check. $5,000 for a thermos of chicken and rice, for a blanket that cost $12 at Target. She left it on his desk with her own note. Keep your money. The soup was free. NB. The exchange became their conversation. No more words spoken aloud, just these small gestures. Recognition without intrusion. Langston stopped trying to pay her. Nomi kept leaving soup. Different kinds now. Pozole on Tuesdays, gumbo on Thursdays. Whatever she'd cooked for her own family. She had 3 kids at home, a husband who worked construction. They didn't have much, but they had enough to share. Real quick, if you're feeling this story, hit that subscribe button. Takes 1 second, means everything. Let's keep going. I remember the day everything froze. 6 months earlier, Tuesday in April. I came home early from a meeting in New York. Wanted to surprise her, take her to dinner. Maybe Navy Pier. She loved the lake at sunset. The elevator opened to silence. Not unusual. She liked her quiet. I called her name. No answer. I found her in her reading chair, the one by the window that overlooked Lake Michigan. Toni Morrison's Beloved open on her lap. Her reading glasses perched on her nose. For a moment, just a moment, I thought she was sleeping. The afternoon light made her look peaceful, younger, like the mother I remembered from childhood. Then I saw her chest wasn't moving. My mother was gone. Etta Winslow Vale raised me alone. My father was a jazz musician with more talent than sense. Left before I could form memories of him. Just a name on a birth certificate. A few vinyl records my mother kept in a box she never opened. She worked 3 jobs to put me through private school. Cleaned houses in the morning. Worked reception at a law firm in the afternoon. Sang in the church choir on Sundays for the extra $20 they paid soloists. She never complained. Never made me feel like a burden. "You're not a burden, baby," she'd say when I tried to thank her. "You're my purpose." She taught me that softness was strength, that you could be brilliant and kind, ambitious and gentle, that success meant nothing if you became cruel in the pursuit of it. When I made my first million, I bought her the penthouse. And when I made my first billion, she told me to remember where I came from. "Money changes people," she'd warned me. "Don't let it change who you are." I called Iris from the hospital, told her what happened, waited for her to say she'd catch the next flight. Instead, I heard hesitation, background noise, laughter, someone calling her name. "Oh, Langston, I'm so sorry, but I can't leave right now. There are commitments, you understand." I hung up, stood in that sterile hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My mother was dead. My wife was at a spa in Napa. And I understood perfectly. She sent flowers to the funeral, white lilies, expensive, impersonal. The card read, "With deepest sympathies, Iris. Not your wife, not love, just her name." Langston hired Rowan Pike in late October, quietly, through a third party, paid in cash. Something felt wrong. Had felt wrong for weeks, maybe months. He'd ignored it at first, chalked it up to grief, exhaustion, the fog that settled over everything since his mother died. But the feeling persisted, sharpened, became impossible to dismiss, missing funds, small amounts at first, then larger. Nothing catastrophic but consistent, like someone testing the limits, seeing how much they could take before anyone noticed, board meetings scheduled without him. He'd find out after the fact, see the notes, realize decisions had been made in his absence. When Langston asked Quillon about it, his oldest friend would shrug. Say it was nothing important, just preliminary discussions. Quillon Reed had been his friend since business school, since they'd been 2 broke kids with big dreams and no connections. They'd built Vale Atlas together, late nights in a shared apartment, ramen for dinner, big ideas scribbled on napkins. Quillon stood beside him at his wedding, helped carry his mother's casket. Langston trusted him with everything, the company, the finances, his life. Emails kept disappearing. He'd search for threads he knew existed, find them gone. IT claimed it was a server issue. Maribel Knox, his head of legal, had given him a look when he mentioned it, a flicker of something in her eyes. Warning, maybe. Rowan Pike was good at his job, the kind of man who could disappear into a crowd, who listened more than he spoke, who noticed the things people tried to hide. The truth came fast, faster than Langston expected, faster than he was ready for. Rowan delivered the report on a Wednesday. Thick manila folder, photographs, bank statements, email transcripts recovered from deleted servers, audio recordings from bugs he'd planted in the boardroom. Langston opened the folder in his office. Alone. The city glittered below. Indifferent as always, he read every page, listened to every recording, watched every piece of evidence slot into place like a puzzle he'd been too blind to see. 3 names. Quillen Reed, his CFO, his brother in everything but blood. Iris Halbrook, his wife. Though the word felt like a lie now. Chairman Hollis Crane. Old money, old power. The man who'd mentored him, who'd opened doors that would have stayed closed, who'd called him son when his own father was a ghost. They were planning to remove him, declaring him emotionally unfit, unstable, too grief-stricken to lead. The narrative was already written. Tragic story. Brilliant CEO undone by loss. Needs time to heal. Best for the company to transition leadership. Quillen would step in as interim CEO. Hollis would ensure the board approved, and Iris was preparing her exit. The prenup was ironclad. She couldn't touch his personal fortune. But if he was removed from the company, if he was deemed unfit, if the divorce happened under those circumstances, she'd get half the company. Her lawyers had found a loophole, a clause about mental competency that nobody thought would ever matter. Vale Atlas Group was worth $43 billion. Half of that was $21.5 billion. Langston sat in his office, the folder open on his desk, and felt nothing. That was the worst part. Not rage, not betrayal, not even surprise. Just a vast, echoing emptiness. His mother had been right. Money did change people, or maybe it just revealed who they'd always been. He spent 3 days reviewing everything, cross-checking Rowan's findings, looking for mistakes, hoping he was wrong. But the evidence was solid. Bank transfers to offshore accounts, Quillen's signature on every transaction, emails between Iris and her divorce attorney, dated 2 months before his mother died. They'd been planning this for half a year, waiting for the right moment. His mother's death had been their opportunity. His grief was their weapon. On the 4th day, Langston made calls. Maribel Knox first. I need you to prepare documents, termination, fraud charges, everything legal and airtight. Her voice was careful. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. You knew? I suspected. Couldn't prove it. But I kept records, just in case. She'd been protecting him, quietly, without him knowing. Langston called an emergency board meeting, Thursday at 2 p.m. He sent the notice himself. No assistant, no warning, just a calendar invite marked urgent. He arrived late. Let them wait. Let them wonder. At 2:17, he walked into the boardroom. Every head turned. He looked terrible. Wrinkled shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, tie loose around his neck. 2 days of stubble. Eyes tired, but clear. So clear. They mistook exhaustion for weakness. He watched it happen in real time. The glances exchanged between Quillen and Hollis, the way Iris straightened in her chair, the subtle shift in posture around the table. They thought this was it, the breakdown they'd been waiting for. Hollis spoke first, his voice warm with manufactured concern. Langston, thank you for joining us. We're all worried about you. This has been a difficult time. Quillen leaned forward, that expression of friendly worry he'd perfected over the years. We're concerned about your stability, the long hours, The isolation. It's not healthy, brother. We think you might need... Langston pressed a button on the remote in his hand. The screens around the boardroom lit up. All 6 of them. Synchronized. Hollis stopped mid-sentence. Bank statements appeared. Wire transfers. Money flowing from Vale Atlas accounts into offshore holdings. Dates, amounts, account numbers. All of it. The room went silent. You could hear breathing. The hum of the air conditioning. Someone's watch ticking. Click. The next slide. Email transcripts. Quillon to Hollis. He's barely functional. We can move within the month. Hollis to Quillon. The board is ready. We just need the legal framework. Iris to her lawyer. How soon can we file once he's removed? The words hung in the air, projected 10 feet high. Undeniable. Quillon's face went gray. Iris remained perfectly still. Only her fingers moved. Drumming once against the table, then stopping. Hollis gripped the armrests of his chair. Knuckles white. Click. Audio file. Hollis's voice filled the room. The boy's a mess. His mother dying was unfortunate, but it's given us an opportunity. We move now while he's vulnerable. Quillon's laugh. He trusts me. He won't see it coming. The silence that followed was absolute. The kind that presses against your eardrums, makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Iris stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor, her face pale but composed. Always composed. Langston... Sit down, Iris. His voice was quiet, calm, devastating in its gentleness. She sat. Quillon opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Lang, listen, this isn't what it looks like. We were trying to help. Help. Langston repeated the word, tasted it, found it bitter. He looked at his oldest friend, this man he'd trusted with everything. You were trying to help. By stealing from me, by plotting to have me declared incompetent, by betraying 20 years of friendship for... He glanced at the screen. $12 million. That's what you took, Quillon. Over 6 months, $12 million. Quillon's hands shook. We built this together, you and me. Remember? The apartment, the ramen, the dreams we had. I remember everything. Langston's voice cut through. I remember you standing at my mother's funeral, crying, telling me she was like a mother to you too. I remember you hugging me, telling me you'd always have my back. He paused. Which part of that was the performance, Quillon? The funeral, or everything before it? Iris spoke, her voice sharp, controlled anger breaking through. You chose grief over me, over us, over this marriage. You stopped coming home. You stopped being a husband. You stopped. You weren't there when she died. The words landed like a physical blow, final, absolute. Iris flinched, the first real reaction she'd shown. I kept my voice level, every word measured. You weren't there when she died. You weren't there for the funeral. You weren't there for anything that mattered. And you want to talk about me choosing grief? I stood, buttoned my cuffs with careful precision, the small gesture somehow more commanding than any speech. No. I chose truth over pretending. I chose honesty over performance. I chose to grieve like a human being instead of treating my mother's death like a minor inconvenience that could be handled with flowers and a card. I looked at Hollis. He'd shrunk into his chair like an old man. You called me son once. You stood at her funeral and told me she'd be proud of the man I'd become. I let that sit for a moment. Was that before or after you started planning to destroy me? Hollis tried to speak. His voice came out weak. Langston, you have to understand. The business required loyalty, integrity, the values my mother taught me, the values you pretended to respect. Langston pressed another button. The boardroom doors opened. Security entered. 4 of them. Professionals. Discreet. Quillon Reed is to be escorted from the building immediately. He's being charged with embezzlement and corporate fraud. The FBI has the full report. Two security officers moved toward Quillon. He stood on shaking legs, looked at Langston one last time, opened his mouth to speak, closed it. What was there to say? The officers took his arms, led him toward the door. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Then he was gone. If you're still watching, don't forget to subscribe. We're almost at the end. And you won't want to miss how this ends. Chairman Crane, you're removed from the board effective immediately. Your severance package has been revoked due to breach of fiduciary duty. The legal team will be in touch regarding criminal charges. Hollis collapsed deeper into his chair, one hand pressed to his chest. For a moment, Langston thought he might be having a heart attack. Part of him, a very small, very dark part, almost hoped so. But Hollis just sat there, breathing hard. The color drained from his face. His legacy destroyed in minutes. Langston turned to Iris, his wife, ex-wife. The papers would be filed by morning. She met his eyes, still composed, still playing the game, even now. And you, Iris, you'll get nothing. The prenup stands. You weren't clever enough. Your lawyers weren't clever enough. Langston kept his eyes on her. That clause about mental competency only applies if I'm actually declared incompetent by a medical professional. I had a full psychiatric evaluation done last week. Clean bill of health. He pulled a document from his jacket, placed it on the table, slid it toward her. Grief isn't insanity, Iris. It's just being human. Something you might want to look into. Iris stood. This time he didn't stop her. She picked up her Hermes bag, smoothed her Valentino dress, walked to the door with perfect posture. At the threshold, she paused, looked back. You'll die alone, Langston. Her voice was cold, matter of fact. A prediction, not a threat. Langston smiled, sad, true. Better than living with a stranger. She left without another word, her heels clicking down the hallway, fading into silence. The remaining board members sat frozen, afraid to move, afraid to speak. Langston looked at each of them, let the silence stretch. Anyone else have concerns about my stability? No one answered. Good. Maribel Knox will serve as interim CEO effective immediately. I'm stepping back from daily operations, not because I'm incapable, but because I choose to. He gathered his papers. This meeting is adjourned. They filed out quickly, heads down, avoiding eye contact. Within minutes, the boardroom was empty, just Langston and the screen still displaying evidence of betrayal. He turned them off one by one. The room went dark except for the city lights beyond the windows. He stood there alone, waiting to feel something. Victory, relief, satisfaction. But there was only that vast emptiness, the same emptiness that had filled him since April. 3 weeks passed. The media had a field day. Vale Atlas CEO exposes massive internal conspiracy. Billionaire's wife caught in corporate coup attempt. CFO arrested for embezzling $12 million. Langston's phone rang constantly. Interview requests, book deals, movie offers. He ignored them all. Maribel ran the company with precision and grace. The transition was seamless. The stock price actually went up. Investors loved the story. Scandal sells, drama makes headlines. But Langston stayed away. He showed up for essential meetings, signed necessary documents, then disappeared again. Not to his office, not to sleep on that couch. He'd had it removed, donated to a youth shelter on the south side, along with the mini-fridge, the blankets, all evidence of his self-imposed exile. One morning, Langston stood outside the penthouse. He'd driven there without thinking. Muscle memory. The doorman greeted him with surprise. Mr. Vale, good to see you, sir. It's been a while. It has, Marcus. I'm sorry about your mother. She was a wonderful woman. Thank you. Langston stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the top floor. His finger hesitated. He could still turn back, go to a hotel, the office, anywhere but here. The doors closed. The elevator rose. His reflection stared back at him in the polished brass. He looked older, tired, but not broken. Not anymore. The elevator chimed. Doors opened. He stepped into the foyer. The penthouse smelled different. Stale air. Dust. But not grief. Not anymore. Time had changed it, made it just a place again. Langston walked through slowly. The foyer with its imported marble. Still impressive, still cold. The living room where nothing lived, but nothing haunted it either. The kitchen. He opened the cabinet. Her coffee mug was there, clean. He'd washed it that night 3 weeks ago, after the boardroom, after Iris left, after everything ended. He'd come here, washed the mug, put it away. A small act of moving forward. Now he took it down, made coffee, used her mug, sat at the counter, looked out at the lake. I walked to her room. The door had been closed for months. I opened it. Sunlight poured in. The book was still on the nightstand. Beloved. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the cover. She'd dog-eared page 273. I turned to it, read the passage she'd marked in pencil. She is a friend of my mind. She gather me, man. The pieces I am, she gather them and give them back to me in all the right order. My throat tightened. But I didn't close the book, didn't run. I sat in her reading chair, the one by the window, where I'd found her. The leather creaked under my weight. The same sound it always made, familiar, not frightening. For the first time since April, I cried, really cried. Not the silent tears on the office couch, not the hollow numbness, but deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere I'd kept locked. I cried for my mother, for the woman who raised me alone, who worked 3 jobs, who never complained, who taught me that softness was strength. I cried for the relationship with Iris that had died long before the paperwork. For Quilon, the brother I'd lost to greed. For Hollis, the mentor who'd chosen power over principle. I cried for myself, for the months I'd spent running, hiding, sleeping in my office because I was afraid to feel this. The grief poured out, and when it finally stopped, I felt lighter, not healed, not fixed, but lighter. Langston opened the windows, let November air rush through. The lake wind carried the smell of winter coming, clean, sharp, honest. He spent the day there, going through her things, not packing them away, just touching them, remembering. Her reading glasses, her collection of Toni Morrison novels, the Chanel No. 5 on the dresser. He opened it, sprayed a little in the air, let the scent settle. It didn't hurt as much as he'd expected. By evening, he'd made a decision. He'd keep the room as it was, not as a shrine, but as a reminder of who she was, what she taught him, why any of this mattered. The next day, Langston called Nomi. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Mr. Vale?" Her voice was cautious, surprised. "I have a proposition for you. Can you come to my office tomorrow?" She arrived at 10, wearing her cleaning uniform. Old habits. Maribel was there too. "Nomi Blackwell, this is Maribel Knox, our CEO." They shook hands. Nomi looked confused, worried. "Am I in trouble?" Langston smiled. "The opposite. I'm offering you a position. Director of Facilities Operations. Corner office on the 45th floor. Salary is $200,000 a year to start." Nomi stared at him. "Why?" The question hung between them. Simple, direct, deserving an honest answer. "Because you saw me when I was invisible. Because you left soup instead of judgment. Because kindness matters more than I gave it credit for." Nomi's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them quickly, professional even now. "I don't have a degree. I didn't finish high school. You have something better," Maribel said. "You have integrity. We can teach you the rest." Nomi looked down at her hands, calloused from years of cleaning. Strong hands, honest hands. "I'll earn it," she said finally, her voice steady, certain. Langston nodded. "You already have." She started the following Monday. Langston had her uniforms donated to the cleaning company, bought her 3 professional suits, arranged for management training, paired her with Maribel for mentorship. Within a month, she'd reorganized the entire facilities department, improved efficiency by 30%, saved the company $2 million annually. She didn't just earn the position, she exceeded it. Langston's phone rang one afternoon. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Hello? Lang, it's Zaire, his younger brother. They hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since their mother's funeral, not since Zaire had shown up drunk, made a scene, left early. Silence stretched between them. Years of resentment, distance, misunderstanding. I heard what happened, Zaire said finally. With Iris, with Quilon. I'm sorry. Thank you. More silence. Then Zaire spoke again, his voice rough. I should have called. After Mom died. I should have been there. I was angry. At you, at myself, at everything. But that's no excuse. Langston closed his eyes. Are you in Chicago? Yeah. South Loop. Been here 6 months. Coffee tomorrow? They met at a cafe in Bronzeville. Zaire arrived first. Langston saw him through the window. His younger brother looked different, thinner, older, sober. They sat across from each other, 2 strangers who shared blood, a mother, a history neither had processed. You look good, Langston said. You look tired, Zaire replied. Then they both smiled, small, sad, real. The conversation started slowly, carefully, like walking on ice, testing each step. Zaire talked about his art, the gallery show he'd just had. Small venue, modest sales, but his own work, his own name. Mom would have been proud, Langston said. Zaire's eyes reddened. She came to my first show. You know that? Langston didn't. 3 years ago, I didn't tell anyone, but she found out somehow, showed up opening night. I was so angry at you back then, Zaire continued. You had everything. The company, the money, the success. And I was struggling, barely making rent, painting in a studio apartment with no heat. He stared into his coffee. But Mom looked at my paintings like they mattered, like I mattered. She bought one, paid full price even though I told her I'd give it to her, hung it in her bedroom. Langston remembered the painting, abstract, bold colors, blues and golds. It had hung across from her reading chair. He'd seen it the day he'd finally gone back to her room. She never told me you painted it, Langston said quietly. I asked her not to. Stupid pride. They talked for 3 hours, about their mother, about resentments Zaire had carried, about distance Langston had created, about being brothers who'd forgotten how. It wasn't fixed. Not yet, but it was a start. That night, Langston made dinner in the penthouse kitchen. First time in months. Nothing fancy. Pasta, garlic bread, salad. The same meal his mother used to make when money was tight, when love had to stretch. He set the table properly, cloth napkins, real plates, not because anyone was coming, but because she'd taught him that how you treat yourself matters. He ate slowly, tasted the food, watched the city lights instead of spreadsheets, put on music, Coltrane, his father's music, his mother's favorite. The apartment filled with saxophone, melancholy and beautiful. After dinner, he washed the dishes by hand, dried them, put them away. Simple acts, grounding, human. Langston walked to the master bedroom. Hadn't slept there since before his mother died. The bed Iris had abandoned 2 years ago. He'd had the sheets changed, the room cleaned, all traces of her removed. It was his space now, just his. He lay down. The mattress felt strange, unfamiliar, but not wrong. The ceiling was different from his office couch, higher, no city lights directly visible, just the soft glow from the windows. The sounds were different too. No hum of servers, no elevator dings, just the quiet rush of Lake Michigan wind, the building settling, his own breathing. He closed his eyes, waited for the panic, the overwhelming grief, the need to run. It didn't come. Instead, there was just tiredness, deep, bone level, the kind that comes from finally stopping. If you've made it this far, don't leave without subscribing. Hit that button. You've been on this whole journey with us. Sleep came slowly. But it came. Not haunted by dreams of finding her in that chair. Not tormented by Iris's coldness or Quillan's betrayal. Just sleep. Deep. Necessary. Healing. He woke to sunlight. Real sunlight. Not the artificial dawn of office fluorescence. The clock read 8:47 a.m. He'd slept 9 hours, first full night in 6 months. Langston lay there, feeling the weight of the blanket, the softness of the pillow, the simple fact of being home. He thought about his mother, about what she'd say if she could see him now, probably something about time, about how grief has its own schedule, can't be rushed, can't be avoided, only walked through. "I'm trying, Mama," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm trying." 6 months later, Langston stood in his office, not the one on the 47th floor. He'd moved to a smaller space on the 40th. Less square footage, better view. He didn't need the corner office, didn't need the status symbol. Maribel had the CEO suite now. She'd earned it. The company was thriving. Stock at an all-time high. 3 new contracts signed. Expansion into European markets. She'd done in 6 months what he'd been planning for 2 years. Langston served as chairman, came in 3 days a week, consulted on major decisions, but mostly stayed out of the way. Let the people he trusted do their jobs. On his desk was a photo. His mother, younger, smiling, in her church choir robe, the way he wanted to remember her. Not in that final moment, but in all the moments before. Nomi knocked on his door. "You wanted to see me?" "Come in. How's the training program going?" She'd started a mentorship initiative, pairing custodial staff with management, creating pathways for advancement. 3 people had already been promoted from cleaning crews to administrative roles. "Better than expected. We have 15 people enrolled. I'm working with HR to expand it." Langston smiled. "Good. You're doing important work." She hesitated at the door. "Thank you for believing in me, for seeing something I didn't see in myself." "You saw me first," he replied, "when I needed someone to. Just returning the favor." She nodded, left quietly, the way she'd done hundreds of times before, but different now. As an equal, a colleague, a friend. Zaire called that evening. "You busy Saturday?" "Not particularly. Why?" "I'm having a show, real gallery this time, Wicker Park. I'd like you to come." "I'll be there." Pause. "It's titled Etta, the whole collection. It's about mom, about loss, about learning to remember without drowning." Langston's throat tightened. She'd love that. Yeah, I think she would. Saturday came. The gallery was packed. Langston stood in front of a massive canvas, blues and golds swirling together, chaotic and beautiful, a woman's silhouette at the center, gathered, whole. The title card read, "She Gather Me," from Beloved, the passage their mother had marked. Langston stood there for a long time. People moved around him, talking, laughing, celebrating, but he just stood still, looking at his brother's grief transformed into something beautiful. "I don't sleep in my office anymore. I go home, to the penthouse that used to feel like a tomb. But now it's just home. I still miss her, every day, in small moments. The smell of coffee in the morning, a line from a book, the sound of Coltrane. But the grief doesn't swallow me anymore. It sits beside me, familiar, manageable, part of who I am now. I've learned that avoiding home didn't protect me from pain. It just delayed it, made it grow in the dark, coming back, really coming back. That's where the healing started. Not in forgetting, not in moving on, but in staying present, in allowing myself to feel everything, the good and the terrible, the love and the loss. Some people don't avoid home because they're weak. They avoid it because they love deeply, because every corner holds a memory. Every sound echoes with absence. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave, create distance, survive. But eventually, you have to come back. Not to the place as it was, but to the place as it is now. Changed. Different. Yours again in a new way. Langston stood on his balcony. November wind off the lake, cold, clean, real. His phone buzzed. A text from Zaire. "Dinner next week?" He smiled, typed back. "Yeah, your place or mine?" The response came quick. "Let's try that Italian spot Mom loved. My treat." Langston looked out at the city. His life. Still complicated, still imperfect, but his. That's the end. If this story hit you somewhere deep, do me a favor. Hit subscribe, drop a like. I'd leave a comment telling me what you felt. These stories are for you, for us, for everyone trying to find their way back home. Stay connected. More stories coming. Real ones. The ones that matter.